So the Bible makes constant reference to the importance of having humility. And God always speaks about how he exalts the humble but opposes the proud. Why is this? The reason is that pride is basically the root of all of our problems. I mean, you look at why Lucifer got kicked out of heaven. It was because he had pride. God made Lucifer the most beautiful angel. He was the most powerful. He gave him a lot, but it says Lucifer was swallowed with pride. I think it's in the book of Isaiah. And Lucifer wanted a throne above God's. So, he had to get cast out of heaven. You look at what happened in the Garden of Eden. God gave us everything we could ever want, and he's like, you can eat of any tree in here, just don't eat of the tree of good. No, don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But what happens? Satan comes and he's like, you're not gonna die if you eat that. God just doesn't want you to be like him. And then in that moment, we made a decision. We're like, screw you, God. We're gonna be our own gods. So we're not gonna listen to you, and we're gonna follow what we say. And then this just opened up a whole world of sin, and sin entered the world. Now we're all born with sin natures, and this leads to a lot of the problems that we have in the world. But even in our own lives, in terms of having pride, the reason we wrestle with God and we struggle with our sin, and we don't listen to what he says and everything, is simply because we think we know better than him. We think we know better than him. We think we want what's best for us, but he doesn't. Or if we believe he wants what's best for us and we want what's best for us, but the paths don't cross, we believe his way isn't going to work, but ours is going to work. And that's just ridiculous, right? That's where a lot of that's what causes pride. But also, it's where a lot of our insecurities come from, right? When we don't follow what it says in the law about how you should not covet, for example. Coveting is, looking at somebody and being like, I should have that. Or they don't deserve that, I deserve that. Or I want that, right? I remember something Matt Chandler said was that self-hatred and coveting, I forgot the other one, self-hatred and coveting is an accusation against God, because you're basically saying, I'd make a better God than you. If I was in your position, I wouldn't give that to him, I'd give it to me because I deserve it, right? And when you think about that, it's just nonsense. Like it really is. But I think the important thing for us to realize about not having pride and everything is that the Bible is not about you. Like, it really isn't about us. And we should we should be relieved about that, because it takes all this pressure off of us. We don't need to be our own gods, because as Matt Chandler says, we make crummy gods, right? We just can't sustain ourselves. It's impossible, right? But yeah, this concept of the Bible is not about you. It's something we miss. And I remember, like, the first time I kind of heard about this concept was when Matt Chandler went to preach at Stephen Furtick's church. It was like in 2011. It was incredible. Safe to say, that sermon got scrubbed from all of Elevation Church's social medias. Matt Chandler was never invited to speak at Elevation Church again. But basically, he came and he preached a sermon that was basically aimed. I mean, he didn't mean to aim it at Stephen Furtick, but he was kind of doing what Paul does. When Paul would write a letter to the church and rebuke it for certain things. Matt Chandler was like, I see a lot of these issues, stemming from these kind of teachings you guys are having, where it's like, the Bible's not about you. And Stephen Furtick is all about the Bible being about me, right? So he did not enjoy that sermon a lot. But that's something we need to realize. I remember I was listening to Craig Groeschel and he was preaching through the story of Jonah, and then he stops for a second and he's like, who's the main character in the story of Jonah? And he's like, if you said Jonah, I see where you're kind of getting that, but you're wrong. The main character of the story of Jonah is God. Similarly, you look at the story of David, because we all love that, right? We all love the story of David. We all want to be like David, a man after God's own heart, and God blessed him with so much, right? But who's the main character in the story of David? It's not David, it's God. Look at the story of David and Goliath, right? Who's the main character in that story? It's God, right? And in the story of David and Goliath, you're not David, right? We're not David, right? The whole point of the story is that God is David in that story, right? Everything David was able to do in that was simply because he put all of his reliance in God, right? It was a story about a testament to David's great faith in God. Well, let me rephrase that. It was a testament to David's complete faith in God. But it wasn't about how great his faith was that led to him, being able to do that. It was about where his faith was placed. The only reason he was able to do that was because God allowed it, right? And he fully surrendered and allowed God. When God was like, go out there and take down that 9-foot giant, David was like, if you said it, I'll do it, right? Because who's going to win, you or the 9-foot giant? Obviously God's going to win, right? But the story is about where David put that faith. It's about God and his power, about how God was able to take down Goliath with a stone and, a miniature boy, because, David was really young when he did that, right? It's about where David's faith was placed. Not, oh, look, if you have great faith like David, you're going to accomplish so many things. It's no, but you put that faith in God, and God is going to accomplish many things through you, right? The whole point of the story of David and Goliath is that in that story, you're not David. You're the Israelite on the side watching David kill Goliath, right? Being in awe of God's greatness, right? That's what the Bible is about. Everything. The Bible from Genesis to Revelation is a story of God. It's a story of God and how he loves us, right? But it's about his power, not about us. And when you hear that, like, at first when you kind of hear it, you're like, it's unsettling, because I'm like, I always read the Bible looking for like how this applies to my life and whatever. And there are teachings to be given there, but again, all the teachings just point back to all glory to God, surrender everything to God. He knows infinitely more than you. That's what you're taking from the Bible, right? And I saw somebody, they were kind of refuting this Matt Chandler idea of like, the Bible's not about you. And they were like, no, the whole point of the Bible is that we can relate to the characters and stuff. And it's like, cool, we can relate to the characters. But again, we're taking the lessons that these characters are taking. And the lessons they're taking is that God is, he's El Shaddai, he's God Almighty, right? Like, it's about God, not us. It's about, as it says in John 3 verse 30, I must decrease so he must increase, right? That's what the Bible's about. And we should rejoice in that. We should relieve. We should just breathe out a sigh of relief, because it's like, now you don't have all this pressure on you, right? You don't have this pressure on you. I don't know how many people watching this that actually like overthink, but I struggle with that, Well, I don't even say struggle with it. I would say it's something I try to take comfort in. It's like an idolization kind of thing. I remember I was hearing Matt Chandler speaking about it in one of his series, a sermon I was listening to this week, right? And you were saying that, like, one of the things we run to for comfort is like control. We like to be like, okay, if I'm in control of this, if people could just listen to me, if things could just go my way, then things would be good and I'd be happy, right? But it's like, you don't have that level of control. And if you did, it probably wouldn't go the way you're thinking, right? I take a lot of like comfort in like, okay, even though I'm struggling now, if this and that happens in the future, I'll be happy. Now all of a sudden I'm trying to take control. But it's like, just relieve. Like breathe a sigh of relief. Because you don't have to do all that. You don't need to take on all that pressure. God is the one who's in control, and he is in control, and he will make things happen, right? But again, make things happen for his glory, not your own. I think another thing we struggle with as Christians is believing that, like, when I follow God, everything's going to be hunky-dory, it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. But it's like, no, God doesn't promise, that if you follow him, you're not going to go through the valley of the shadow of death. It says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, right? You're there. Like, the whole thing about God, right, about Jesus, is that you will go through struggles. There's no point. In fact, he doesn't even. Not only does he not say you're not going to go through struggles, he promises you're going to have struggles, right? But his other promise is that in that struggle, he's there with you, right? Because again, if you rely on God, you don't have to worry about anything. And I think that's something we need to learn. Like, the Bible's not about us. But you guys, let me know what you think of this concept in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe to join the community. Until next time, see you guys.